over there. Christina, can you hear? Excellent. So you guys can just make your way in, have a seat. We have crash pads set up, chairs. Don't be shy. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Feel free to grab some beer, wine, popcorn. My name is Alexis, and thank you so much for coming to tonight's event. We are very excited to be presenting the No Man's Land Film Festival, which will begin, that will be beginning at around 8 p.m. But before that, we have this phenomenal panel of women. And before we jump into speaking to each of them about their experiences, I just wanted to say a couple things about why we're here tonight. Discover Outdoors and the Cliffs obviously have been working together all week, actually now for the second year in a row on programming for the Women in the Outdoors Week. It's a second annual week that Discover Outdoors has presented that focuses on bringing women together through the outdoors. So whether it's climbing or biking or backpacking, camping, we've had a really successful week so far. Tomorrow, if you're interested, we have a climbing trip in the Gunks. So if you want to get outside or interested in learning more about transitioning from the gym to the crag, highly recommend you sign up for that trip. We have some members from the Gunks Climbing Coalition coming and speaking to us about what it means to climb outside and how it's different than climbing inside a gym. So you can talk to myself, you can talk to Lydia about that trip. And if you'd just like to know more about Women in the Outdoors Week, we still have some great events coming up, so you can speak to us about that. So, to jump right in, No Man's Land Film Festival is an incredible collection of films that focuses on badass women doing badass things in the outdoors. And we have a pretty badass group of ladies. So I'm gonna have a seat, but I will just do a short introduction of each lady that is sitting next to me, and then we'll dive in to some questions and then open it up for a Q&A at the end. So feel free to jump in, share your thoughts. Men as well, thank you so much to the men in the audience who are representing, that's awesome. Okay, here we go. So Mina, who is right next to me. Mina Okpi is an activist and the founder of Black People Who Love Outdoors and Adventure, which is a group that started on Meetup in 2015 and now has more than 2,000 members. After noticing very few people of color taking part in outdoor activities, Mina began Black People Who Love Outdoors and Adventure to plan and organize events with a goal to introduce people of color to the outdoors and adventure activities. Along that journey, she's been breaking stereotypes and stigmas within and outside the community. So please give her a round of applause. Next to Mina, we have Whitney Boland. And Whitney is a climber and freelance writer, currently working on a master's in acupuncture. Her climbing has spanned over 17 years and taking her to countless crags throughout North America and Europe. She has ticked V10, 514 on bolts, and 513 on gear, the latter of which was mostly in her current home crag of the Gunks. So thank you, Whitney, for joining us. And then we have Laura Edmondson. Laura is a rock climber and community leader for Brown Girls Climb. After a year-long climbing trip around the world, she decided to settle in the Northeast and now manages a nonprofit called Best Buddies that strives for the social inclusion of people in with intellectual and developmental disabilities. When she's not working, Laura enjoys exploring her new home, which is in New Hampshire. Excellent. And climbing both locally and globally. So thank you, Laura, for joining us. Next to Laura, we have Lauren Skonieczny. Did I say it right? Lauren and I have known each other for years, so that's just not acceptable. That's my bad. She is the operations manager and senior guide at Discover Outdoors. And when Lauren is not guiding, she also plays Australian football and runs ultra marathons, no big deal. She loves to share her energy and excitement with other New Yorkers, helping them learn about the beauty in and beyond their backyard and discover the great things they're capable of accomplishing. She is also the creator of Women in the Outdoors Week. So thank you, Lauren. If you're just coming in, have a seat, feel comfortable, grab some wine, beer, popcorn. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in. So if you go on the No Man's Land Film Festival website, you will read that it is an all-women adventure film festival that meets a need and desire to highlight and connect individuals who identify, I love this, as women in pursuit of the radical. So just to start, ladies, what is the most radical adventure you've ever been on? So we have a limited chord distance, but I'm gonna pass this around in the least awkward way possible. Who wants to start? Come on, don't be shy, all right.
Awesome. So yeah, the great thing about outdoor adventure and outdoor sport is that it kind of meets people wherever they are. So, you know, the most radical thing is not necessarily the highest peak or the longest trail. Me personally, all my answers are going to be cheesy, by the way. The most radical thing is just being able to do this for a job and to share my passion for the outdoors with everybody else. I definitely do not take for granted that I get that opportunity. And being able to take people out when it's their first hike or when it's their, you know, they've been hiking for years and years and years and they're taking on the Devil's Path or the Great Range in the Adirondacks, that's really exciting. I think the breadth of what we are able to do is pretty radical.
All right, so kind of like what Lauren said, radical doesn't have to mean like climbing the biggest mountain or kayaking the hardest waters, but the most radical thing I think I've done is going on the climbing trip that was mentioned in my little introduction. But what wasn't mentioned is I did that after only being a climber for like 3 months. I've been climbing for about 3 months and like signed myself up to go on this international climbing trip, and it turned out to be amazing. It was the best experience of my life, but at the time it didn't seem that radical, but looking back it seems kind of crazy.
In a similar vein to all of this, I was like, I don't know, I'm a sport climber. I just, you know, go to the crag and go climbing. So radical isn't the word I would use, but then I think about my journey, the whole, I don't know, 17 years that I've been climbing and just the different places it's taken me and all the people that I've met along the way. That is definitely like the most memorable thing about it. And you see and meet so many incredible people from different cultures, and being able to learn from all those people is pretty radical. You know, you see all these, you see life from like a different angle and from a different way, and that's pretty cool. Yeah.
My radical is, not meaning to be a downer, but when I took a trip around Europe, started in Dubai, and then took a trip around Europe. But I kind of did it as a leap of faith because at the time I was just recovering from being very sick. And I really didn't even have the energy for the trip. So I kind of did it on faith that, you know, I would be able to get through this trip. So I didn't do anything too crazy, just low energy type of things. But it was just the experience of going through the trip and, you know, just being alone and in your thoughts and gaining perspective and, you know, just going slowly through life and paying attention to everything. That was my radical, was actually a slower trip.
That's a hard thing to do too, just kind of slow down and take that time for yourself. So over the week, we've been speaking about communities of women in the outdoors, and we actually had a conversation with Shelma from Flash Foxy on Tuesday evening where she spoke a lot about women powering women. And thinking about that, can you all share an experience or story of how another woman has either motivated, mentored, or inspired you throughout your career in the outdoors? And it could be something small, a stranger, or it could be a more meaningful experience that you had with a mentor. But just this idea of, as women, we don't often connect with other women in the outdoors in that sort of leadership way. So who wants to start? We're gonna go this way now.
Mine came to me pretty easily. It's Serena Williams, and I just love her strength. I don't know if you guys have been following her show on HBO, just talking about her having a baby and all her issues and her coming back. Just seeing her get through that and still wanting to be on top, you know, after her time off and after all her issues just inspires me to death. I have her picture up on my wall at home. But yeah, she's my inspiration.
I think that terms of mentors and inspiration from women in the climbing community, I've climbed with a lot of different women over the years, and I have really great friends, and I kind of learned something from all of them. And it really doesn't matter who they are. I find a lot of inspiration, not only the physical strength of people, but the emotional, mental strength of people. It doesn't have to be someone that is climbing strong, just going climbing with someone that has some kind of strength that you don't have. You can learn something from anyone, because everyone's going to have a different strength than you. So that's always been the biggest one. But in terms of inspiration with outside of people that I know and that I climb with regularly, of course, Lynn Hill has always been an inspiration, because she didn't want to be strong for a female. She just wanted to be strong, and Margot Hayes is along the same vein in that, she's not kind of dividing people. She's just a climber, it really is uniting for the community, and I think that itself is really inspirational, is bringing people together. I think that's what it's really about, is trying to find the community within everyone and celebrating everyone's strengths, and that's it.
I find myself really inspired by the other women I work with through Brown Girls Climb. Bethany Leibowitz is our founder, and she reached out to me and asked me to be a part of the group, and she and the other women have done a lot to motivate me to climb harder and climb more, but also have given me the tools and resources to be an activist in my own community. We don't all live in the same area, so we stay in contact over the phone and social media and stuff like that, and we're talking to each other all the time, but they have really given me what I need to boost my morale and keep me motivated to get out there and send for our community.
Thanks. So, like Alexis mentioned, this is the second time that we're doing Women in the Outdoors Week, and it was created last year, kind of just by us talking in the office a little bit after the election, at a time when we felt incredibly powerless. And so we decided, well, let's create this event. Let's just put the call out to a bunch of women. And the impetus for that was when I was in high school growing up, I used to go backpacking with my group of female friends. And I look back at those moments as some of the most formative in my life. That was where I learned to be strong and to connect with other women and to not tear other women down. And I look back constantly at that experience, and I'm so appreciative, because I think that a lot of young women don't get those experiences. And therefore don't get the benefits of it. So when we were having these conversations in the office about just feeling kind of powerless, it was I turned right back to that, and I thought of my good friends that I grew up with and with whom I still have an incredibly close relationship because of those experiences. And the amazing things that they're doing are definitely a product of that as well. So that was part of the inspiration for just creating a place to bring women together. And last year, some of the women that have come out have kept their connections going, and to be a part of that is just amazing. And to see women just take the charge over the past 3-4 years in the outdoor industry and run with it is just incredibly inspiring. The groups that are coming up, a lot of groups for women of color, it's really great to see people following through on that, for sure.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some individual questions, and Laura, I wanted to start with you. One of the things that I personally find so inspiring about being a woman in the outdoors is how many women are taking their individual passions for different activities and turning it into a greater organization. So I wanted you to talk to us about when you decided that you wanted to integrate your personal love of climbing and adventuring with your passion for community and activism. And talking about that kind of integration between outdoor adventure and activism, if you could also elaborate on why you think the outdoors has become such a powerful space for social change. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with regards to diversity or with women, but just in general, whether we're seeing, the movements we're seeing around land conservation, or the movements we're seeing to incorporate education into the outdoors for students who don't have access to a lot of expensive gear or whatever it is. Why do you think the outdoors has become that space for social change? It's a lot.
Yeah, no pressure. So I think what what drew me to merging my activism with my passion for climbing was kind of what you touched on with the election. I got back from our trip right around the time everything was changing, and I just felt the need to draw closer to a community, to bring my community closer to me, and to bring something to my community that was almost entirely positive. We spend so much time like fighting and using our emotional bandwidth to just like get through every day. Having a place like an affinity space where we can all come together and do something fun where we're empowering each other was really important to me. And so being able to create that space for the people around me has been just such a treat. I think that the climbing or the outdoor space in general is ripe for social change because the outdoors belong to everyone. Sometimes that is forgotten, but like the indigenous populations have been climbing mountains longer than any of the rest of us have. The space belongs to everyone, and that's something that I think is really important that we need to be reminded of. So whether it's providing opportunity, whether it's providing gear, whether it's providing transportation, making that happen for everyone is something that I think is changing, which is amazing.
All right, Lauren. So as I mentioned, I've had the privilege of working with Lauren over the past few years now, and she's extremely disciplined and motivated and accomplished. And we were on a hiking trip. We have some people who are with us. We did the Great Range in the Adirondacks a few weeks ago, and I noticed on one of her Nalgene's she has a sticker that says "Never give up," which is fairly cliche, but when you're actually running ultramarathons, I think that has a new meaning. And I think when you're engaging in the outdoors in the way that a lot of us do, the idea of quitting and giving up is always something we're thinking about. So I wanted to ask you specifically, when you're engaged in big challenges, things that would make the average person say, you know, there's no way I could ever do that. So what keeps you pushing yourself? Like, tell us a little bit about that personal mental process of how you don't actually give up, and what that journey's been like, and like, do you have a mantra? Do you have a book that you like to read? But yeah, just tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think the secret is that I'm a woman and I'm Polish, so I'm just like incredibly stubborn. And I actually do give up sometimes, and I think that that's really important. And one of the kind of most transformational moments in kind of my own outdoor athleticism was realizing that it's okay to hit your limit and to come back stronger next time. And I've learned much more than the races that I've DNF'd than the races that I've finished. And actually, I think why I'm drawn to outdoor adventure in the way that I am, and kind of extreme outdoor adventure, is because I know I'm going up against something that I'm never going to beat. It's just a constant mirror to be held up to my own kind of humanity and my own limits. And that's the only way that you meet them and that you can push past them. And honestly, the biggest thing that's changed how I perceive myself in the outdoor space is that kind of realization that I'm never going to conquer it, and I don't really have any interest in conquering things either. I like to go into spaces and see what I can do and push myself to my own internal personal limits, and then figure out maybe how to be stronger next time. But that kind of respect and humility when it comes to outdoor spaces, I think, is really important. And that's something that I think women bring to the table really well. You know, we hear all these stories from the early 1900s about all these explorers who wanted to go out and conquer the world and exert their kind of, you know, humanness on it. And that's not really where the outdoors is going. I think it's really transforming into almost a more feminine mindset about like, let's go out and let's respect it and let's coexist with it, and that's going to be awesome. So in my own experiences, when I changed my mindset, I set different goals. Obviously, I want to get to the summit, but what else can I get from this experience? That's just made it a lot more fulfilling to be in the outdoors.
Before we get to the next question, let's just take a moment to kind of talk about that. If anyone has anything else that they want to say, that kind of, how do you find that balance between enjoying the outdoors, but also being not necessarily a competitor in the outdoors, but pushing yourself through a lot of different mental and physical challenges? Anyone want to say anything?
With climbing, every route is different, every type of rock is different, and I think one of the big joys that I get is finding those different movements and the different, even the intricacies on the rock, the way your hands kind of settle on a hold, everything's so different, and you're interacting with it on such a personal, visceral level that brings this great respect to climbing and to nature and to kind of the whole package. I'm in acupuncture school right now, so we're talking about the 5 elements, it's sounds crazy, I know. Wind, water, wind, fire, earth, metal, water is the whole cycle. And nature is a reflection on the inside, and everything that goes on in your body is reflected in nature, and that's how Chinese medicine looks at the body. So there's this intimate connection with nature and yourself, and so I think that translates into my love for climbing as well, is because there's so much that you can see in yourself by viewing nature and interacting with nature, and I find that a really powerful thing.
I just wanted to, I really felt what you were saying. I think especially in the age of just people traveling to just put stamps on their passport, it's super important. Like I was saying earlier, just to take the time and take things in, take in your surroundings, taking the people, respect the people, and just think about their history and all of that while you're also, still pushing yourself. But I do think it's super important because I see a lot of people just going for that, let me conquer it and let me move on, but that's not, I honestly don't think that should be the goal.
We've had a lot of conversations about this, but I think the idea too of providing that sort of education, which kind of needs to be explicit, especially if you're coming from a space like this, where you're not in the outdoors, but then you're bringing it in the outdoors without kind of having that respect and that reverence for the spaces that you're existing in. So, and it's an education like anything, where you really have to spend the time. Okay, so Mina. So similar to Laura, I'm also interested in that moment when you wanted to take your love of something very personal and you wanted to turn that into a community movement. So clearly, you mentioned that you saw that there was a need for engagement and organizing in a space where people of color have historically been underrepresented. So tell us about that moment, and also talk, honestly about why you think it's important to promote equality and diversity and demand representation of not just women, but of communities of color in the outdoors.
Sure. So the moment, I think I remember, it was a bit selfish. I'd gone, I think I've told the story, I went camping in Montauk, and I was supposed to have some friends come with me. But sure enough, and I had bought a 6-person tent thinking there'd be all these people. But sure enough, there I was by myself in this tent. And I have the mindset that I'm going anyways. That's just always my, thing. I'm not waiting. I kind of stopped waiting for people to go with me. So I was there, and I was on the beach. And it just, but also just walking around the campsite, it was just so stark. I honestly didn't see, it might have been, maybe I missed someone, but I didn't see any people of color or any black people there. And it was just so beautiful. And it was also a time where I felt like I needed the healing from nature, and I was getting so much from that experience, just being there. And I thought, not even my friends, but just people in general, because just being outdoors, over time, I've noticed this. But for some reason, that particular time, it just bothered me enough to say, something's got to be done. And that was, after that trip, was when I went back and created the group. And I said, you know what, if I get a couple of people to go camping or something, that would be great. So, and then it kind of morphed into what it is right now, which is almost 2,000 people. But yeah, it's been really amazing. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's like anything. You kind of have this language of like everyone in the room would agree, like, oh, of course we need more diversity in the outdoors, but how does that happen? Like, does that happen by outdoor companies providing representation in their catalogs or in their blog posts or in their campaigns, or does it happen in schools? Does it happen in climbing gyms? Does it happen with, you know, outdoor coalitions making a concerted effort to recruit people of color? Does it happen with just like, what are, in your opinion, what are the most powerful vehicles for creating that type of engagement and getting higher numbers of representation? Because if we're talking about women, you know, has its own challenge, but women of color has a completely different set of challenges. So like how do we make it better?
It's a complex question. it's definitely not an easy answer. But I think part of the reason is it's a generational factor. Where I was saying yesterday, where a lot of the older generation, they didn't grow up. They almost were instilled a fear of the outdoors. Is, you know, something bad would happen to you if you went outdoors. You know, for many reasons. But that fear is passed down to, I think, the current generation. So it's many things. It's trying to break that cycle. It's having representation in media, increasing that, but not just increasing it for the moment because that's the hot and trendy thing to do, but like actually making change. Like, do you have people of color in your organization, not just in your magazine? You know, are they making decisions? And, you know, if you have people in your organization, it's going to be natural. The decisions are going to come. It's not going to be forced. But then also similar to something like what Discover Outdoors is doing with their foundation, where they're getting, you know, youth and urban youth to come out and go outdoors. I mean, and also just like affordability, you know, cost. The outdoors, I mean, I hate to say it, is so expensive, and it just makes it so hard for people trying to feed themselves and send their kids to summer camp that's like $11,000, you know, go rock climbing. So, you know, it just has to be all those things just needs to be taken into account. And I'm very myself conscious of, it's weird, but what I wear when I go outdoors with my group, because I don't want to wear clothing that says this is out of reach to you. And I think just little things like that, you know, I see some people, and I don't point out things or you know, make anyone feel funny, but sometimes when you go outdoors and you have head-to-toe gear that costs almost like, you know, $500 or just clothing, I think sometimes you have to think about, is this saying inclusive, or is this just saying, I don't necessarily, yeah, gear is amazing, but I think that there's a way that you can convey sort of inclusivity and actually, you know, you're actually representing it, you know. So I think it's a multi-faceted sort of thing.
Yeah, it's ironic because getting outside should also be like the most affordable thing to do. You know, like you really don't need that much. But you're absolutely right. And I think that's an interesting perspective to have in terms of like just using less in general. But so often people think they need all of these things to do a very basic thing, and having all the things does not make them good at doing that thing. Okay, so Whitney, you touched on this when you were talking about Lynn Hill, but you are hands down one of the strongest climbers in the climbing community, and I want you to talk a bit more about what it means to be a strong woman versus a strong climber, and is being a strong woman something that you identify with and feel empowered by versus being just a strong climber? Or would you rather there be no conversation about gender? And then if you can talk a little bit about how being a woman has changed the way that people discuss your accomplishments or define your strengths. And is that frustrating or is that empowering?
A lot in a question. In terms of people discussing accomplishments, I have really found nothing but respect from people in the climbing community. And I think that has to do, it speaks a lot for the climbing community. And I think that, I mean, the key word is respect, and this is, I feel like, a theme that comes up a lot in terms of like going into nature and respect for nature and respect for all the people that are there, no matter who they are. And, you know, being able to find and like celebrate people's accomplishments, no matter what it is, you know, whoever's climbing along next to you, being able to congratulate them and see like the great thing that they just did, and fostering that kind of like, yeah, I did that. I think that's really important, and that goes along with the earlier question, is kind of trying to find in yourself what you can congratulate yourself on, because so many times as a female climber, you always feel like you could, I mean, maybe I'm speaking personally here, but I always feel like I could be doing better, and I don't really view myself as like a strong climber or a strong female climber. I don't even like view myself much as like a strong presence in the community, but I think that the lesson that I could even learn myself is being able to like look at your own accomplishments and looking at yourself and being like, yeah, that was cool, like I did that, and being able to congratulate yourself. And I think that that goes into something that I would like hope for everyone to kind of search for, is not comparing yourself to others, and not like looking at some social media account or Instagram and being like, wow, I'm not as strong as them, or like they, you know, are doing cooler things than I am, or they went here, or they went there. It's like not trying to compare yourself to someone else, is trying to like look inside and be like, this is this cool thing that I did, and that came out of like the inspiration for climbing this particular rock or this route or whatever it was, like finding that thing in yourself. And that's just like so huge on so many levels, I find, and it kind of transcends a lot of things, is like not comparing, not having that us and them kind of thing. Does that answer most of it?
We were having a similar conversation on Tuesday night, which I thought was interesting, especially for so many women who get into the outdoors. It's often like, you're not the girly girl, you're the tomboy. Like you're the one that can hang with the boys, and then as you get older, you're the one who can hang with the men. And when you kind of realize that there's room, you don't have to be either the tomboy or the girly girl. Like you can exist in a space that's much more open. But also that like you don't have to compete necessarily with other women. Like you don't just have to be the best woman at the crag or the best woman in the race. There's that space for all of us to exist. And that comes with a lot of self-confidence and a lot of acceptance, but I think also a lot of just spending time with each other. Because you mentioned as well, Lauren, this idea that like once you kind of realize that like the other woman in the room is not your enemy, and there doesn't have to be that competitiveness. Does anyone want to speak to that in terms of, yeah.
So I think just one really cool thing about the outdoors is that outdoor sport is actually a place where women are not only going to be like the best woman, you know, with that being quantified. It's actually, outdoor sport is a place where women as athletes can thrive. And in a few years, you know, women who are doing endurance sport, women who are climbing, are probably actually going to start to surpass men. These are sports that are really tapping into the strengths of women in terms of mental endurance. Just going through this world as a woman trains you for mountaineering, for ultra running, for like just holding it in and putting up with it, for better or worse. And the way that our bodies are also, the way that we metabolize actually really sets us up to be strong endurance athletes. So I think in a few years it's going to stop being like, you're a great climber for a woman, or like, she was the best woman that ran the ultra marathon. She was the fastest woman's known time on the Appalachian Trail. And for a long time, actually, a woman held the FKT in general on the Appalachian Trail. So this is a space where like women can really thrive as athletes. And when that turnover happens, that's just going to have more and more women that are being held up as kind of like the epitome of working hard and training and trying hard. And that's going to be great to see.
Okay, so one more question, and then we will open it up to the audience. much of this week has been focused on mentorship. We actually run a program here at the Cliffs that is women mentoring young women, and they're going to be getting outside and climbing next week outside for the first time, which is really exciting. But this idea of building really meaningful relationships, or building a really meaningful relationship with another woman, is something that I think is lacking. I think mentorship in general is changed and is lacking in a lot of ways. So you can either talk specifically about your experience as a mentor or being mentored, or you can just share one piece of advice that you would give to another woman beginning her adventures in the outdoors. So I'll make it a little more open. So either just talk about being mentored, or being a mentee, or just share one piece of advice. Who wants to start? Okay.
All right. I have more just kind of like a general piece of advice that I wish I had gotten or heeded. I may have gotten it and didn't listen. And that is to just learn to be happy with failing. So in climbing, if you don't complete a route, I might consider that a failure. But finding a way to learn something from it and feel good about even just like completing one more move on the climb, even if I don't make it to the top, like learning how to be okay and process that in a positive way would have made my early climbing experiences a lot more positive. So that's, any new climbers out there, that's my piece of advice.
I like that, making it like a learning experience. I think that I could probably still do that. But I think the recommendation I would have is ask lots of questions, especially like learning to trad climb in the gunks. Like there's a lot of, it's hard to, we were talking about this earlier, it's hard to like watch a video about trad climbing and then go do it. It's so situational, it's so different every single time, and try to find someone that you trust and just ask them, like, can you show me what you're doing step by step? Like, can we go out and you're just showing me what to do? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, why did you do that? Just asking lots of questions and not being afraid to ask the questions, like not being afraid that this person is like what they're thinking, but finding someone that you think you can trust. And then the thing I would urge people to do as people that have been climbing a long time is someone mentored you, most likely, so try to mentor someone else. You know, it's kind of the rule of reciprocity, like giving it back where you can and taking someone else out and being like, you know, someone that did this for me and I'm going to do this for you. Okay, you want to learn to build an anchor? Here we go. This is like rule number 1. This is why you're doing it. This is, you know, trying to go through all those steps, because I think once you learn the whys of why things are happening and why you're doing particular things, then it becomes a lot easier. And like, you know, learning why, then you can apply that rule to the same thing in a different situation.
Yeah, I'd say and actually, I guess that this is, when you asked about a mantra that I have when I'm running, it is, you deserve to be here. And so that would also be the piece of advice that I would give to anybody who's looking to get into outdoor sport. Like Laura said, the outdoors exists for everybody. Nobody has an inherent claim to it. We barely have an inherent claim to it. We're lucky, and it's an honor to be able to go into it. And Karima and I were actually talking the other night about imposter syndrome. Even having been a guide for however long, like I'm helping to run this company, there are still moments that I'll show up and be like, what am I doing? Is everyone gonna find me out? So I'd say that my piece of advice is own your accomplishments. If your accomplishment is you went out on a hike for the very first time and you hiked a mile, that's amazing. If your accomplishment is that you got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, that's amazing too. Women, I think, have a tendency to be like, to like, well, but it wasn't that great. Don't do that. You earned it. You deserve to be there. And same thing, the outdoors exists for everybody. Just because, you know, as of right now, there's not a ton of people who might look like you still deserve to be there. Show up. And the fact that you showed up and you were brave to do that is even more important. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, I would say something along the same lines, but I would also say like give encouragement easily to people around you. I know with my group, it's interesting because a lot of them are like young adults, young professionals, but a lot of the things that we do, they're doing for the first time. And so a lot of times they have, I mean, you're talking about imposter syndrome, but this is like someone who's an adult trying things that they feel like other people have been doing for the first time. So they have that syndrome where, you know, they might have just done something awesome like surfing for the first time, and you know they're so excited, but they're like yeah, but you know I'm sure this other people are so amazing and I'm just crap. So for me the challenge is saying no, like your accomplishment is worth it. It's not a competition. You know, everything that you achieve, you know, is definitely worth it. So I would say, you know, give encouragement easily, especially to beginners and people that are just starting out.
Great. So I want to open this up to the room. We have a few minutes, and would anyone like to be brave and stand up and ask a question? And I really, like, for the guys in the room, I don't want you to feel at all like you don't have a voice here. So if you have any questions in this unique opportunity to ask a panel of women, if you have any questions, it could be simple, it could be more profound, but yes, Randy.
I would really like to know, can you all hear me? Yeah. I'd really like to know, for each of you, how did you get out there? When did you start? How old were you? Where did you go? Just your story, your first story, each of you.
All right, we're gonna go down the line.
I was in college when I started, and I went camping with a bunch of strangers. It was some environmental organization I found online, and we went into the forest in Vermont for my first camping trip. It was big, it was a real eye-opener, but amazing.
I also started in college. I had done gymnastics for years, and was not doing gymnastics anymore. I was like, I don't know what I was doing, trying to find something else to do. And my brother worked at the climbing gym because we went to the same college, and he was like, Whitney, you'd love this. And so I started climbing in the gym there, and then I met some total strangers and went down to the Red River Gorge for the first time with them. And it was, looking back, kind of horrifying, the things that I did. I probably shouldn't have done those things. But I love this story because it just like goes to show, like I didn't grow up camping or doing anything outside. It's just not how I grew up in Kentucky. And on the first trip down to the Red, we went down there and it was like sub-freezing temperatures at night, and I brought one little thin blanket. That was it, and I just was gonna wrap up in a little cocoon on the ground while the water froze by my head. It was miserable, but I learned.
I got started just going into the outdoors in general with my family. We would go camping a lot for vacation. We went hiking. So that was something I always grew up. I grew up near the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And I also would go to summer camp every summer. That's where I first ever tried climbing, was at summer camp. I didn't really get into climbing until about 3 years ago. I had climbed at summer camp, but I didn't realize that was something you could do without someone, setting up a rope for you. But then I met this guy, and he was like, hey, let me take you climbing. And so 3 months later, we went on that long climbing trip together, and it worked out. He's here. Still going climbing with me. So that's kind of how I got to where I am now.
I was lucky enough to have parents that were just a couple of hippies, so our vacations were go out into the woods, and they'd throw us in a pen in the woods, and we'd be in the dirt playing. And those experiences were really formative. We went to New Hampshire a lot. I have photos of my parents carrying me up Mount Washington, and I'm like, that's really hard. So I realized that I'm really lucky to have had those experiences.
Anyone else? I think we need at least one more question. Karima. I know you're loud. I don't need to give you the mic.
I was just stretching, really. It was a question. I was just curious about, you guys are all leaders in different spaces, and what would you say is, what would you say is one of the obstacles you face constantly while trying to grow your communities? I guess it's for the community leaders, these three ladies here. What would you say is definitely a constant obstacle that you have to overcome when trying to grow your communities?
Could everyone hear that? No. So the question is, what are the obstacles that you've encountered in trying to grow your community, specifically within activism and organization?
Right. So, she has Discover Outdoors Foundation, Women Outdoors Week.
Right.
Brown Girls Climb, and Black people, getting outdoors. I'm sure I'm saying this wrong. Sorry, Mina. It's long.
So who wants to start?
So I'm currently living in New Hampshire, which is a pretty white state. So even finding brown girls in New Hampshire can be a barrier. And then also just convincing them that just because they're an adult and they've never climbed before doesn't mean that they're not able to start now. I mean, like I said, I didn't start until just a few years ago, so I pretty much started climbing as an adult. And so convincing them that they're welcome, that they can do it, that other people like them are doing it, and starting from scratch is sometimes a barrier. That's the biggest thing I think I've faced.
I would say pretty much the same thing. Convincing people that that first of all, it's a friendly community, because I think sometimes people, when they go out for things the first time, they're even more nervous, and sometimes they even had interactions that have made them sort of, jittery, wary. So just first of all, being a friend in the community before even, getting into the outdoors and the adventures, just first making people feel welcome and comfortable, and feel like family. And in that way, they trust you more to do these things, and to know that they can let their guard down to do these things, because you're taking an adult, someone who did something. A lot of people do these things as children, so you're taking someone as an adult to do a lot of things for the first time. They can feel very almost naked, so it's important to make people feel comfortable.
I'll just mention it quickly since Karima brought up the foundation. So for those of you not familiar with Discover Outdoors in our community, everything that we do as a standard guide service, outdoor adventure company, that feeds our foundation. And the mission of the foundation is just to create leaders in underserved communities in New York City in the outdoor industry. So I think that the biggest barrier there is just exactly what Mina mentioned. A lot of the populations that we work with have been brought up to have a fear of the outdoors, even at the ages that we meet them. And if not even an explicit fear, just a sense that this isn't something that's for us. So we've tried to make a real concerted effort in the past few years to make sure that we're really investing in kind of bringing leaders up in the community from these communities so that they can be mentors and leaders. It's one thing when, I go in to a school in Brooklyn and I'm from Massachusetts, I grew up camping, I'm white. That's a lot different from seeing someone who came from that school coming in and speaking. This is a real path. So it's been a challenge to kind of shift that mindset a little bit, but I think it's super important.
I'm sorry, you have to explain this one line to other people. I know what that means. You said, this is not for us, was one of the lines that you said. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the students that we work with, they just don't see a lot of people of color in traditional media that shows the outdoors. The leaders in the outdoor community all kind of look like me, or did for a long time, and that's changing, and that's super important that that's changing. And I think that it's when we go into a school and we're like, here's a cool career path for you. You can grow up, you can be a guide, you can be a product designer for the North Face. It's just not something that these kids are even A, thinking about because they don't see themselves there, and B, maybe just isn't in the forefront of their mind because they're just trying to go to school every day. So I think that it's really important to kind of put leaders in front of these populations who they can connect with and they can really see themselves in. And that applies to all communities in the outdoors. It applies to women. We need to have more women leaders that are visible so that women can see themselves as mountaineers, they can see themselves as business leaders in the industry, so that they can actually realistically go on those paths. And it benefits everybody. When everybody's represented, it's exciting and it's a good business. So yeah, I'll stop talking.
Whitney, I didn't want to exclude you from that conversation. Do you have anything that you want to add? Yusha? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially with regards to kids. I spend a lot of time working with kids, and if you can get to them at a young age, they have such an inclusive mentality, and like even the high school girls that we've worked with, if at first they feel a little uncomfortable or they feel like they maybe don't belong, it really only takes one experience outside where they suddenly feel like they have this tremendous new power and agency to be leaders. And so I would say if you have the opportunity to work with a child and bring them outside, like don't hesitate, because they will just completely thrive and they will teach you so many things, and seeing the world through their eyes is so exciting. Any final last quick questions? Yes, Christina. Next adventures.
I'm driving cross country a month from today. I'm starting to drive. I'm moving to Portland, but I'm staying with Dio, so you'll still see lots of me.
I don't have anything on the immediate horizon, unfortunately. I guess. Yeah, just getting out on the weekends is an adventure for me at this point in my life, because I'm, working 9 to 5. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't deliver on this question.
In about, I guess, the beginning of July, I'm going up to Lion's Head in Canada for about a week. Yeah, sport climbing over the water. It's really beautiful. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
The immediate, I would say next weekend we're going surfing in Rockaway Beach. So that's my current favorite activity. So that's pretty exciting, just to work on my, my skills. Yeah.
All right, can we get a big round of applause for So it's 8 o'clock. We're going to take a few minutes just to get things set up. While we're doing that, though, I just wanted to shout out Randy, who is right over here. She's written this incredible book called Who Is That? Outdoor Adventures for Girls. I wanted to do a read aloud to everyone, but we probably shouldn't do that. But if you would like to take a peek at the book, if you have a child in your life, a girl in your life, this is an incredible book that really shows young girls, young women, that they can do all of these things that we often don't see girls doing. So definitely take a peek. It's over at the table. Grab a drink, grab a snack. We're gonna get things set up, and then we'll jump right into the films. Thank you.
Mina, how was that for you?
That was amazing. That was amazing being part of the panel, the Women in the Outdoors panel, with this lovely women talking about our organization. So yeah.
That was awesome. Let's go chat with those. Ladies, how was that for you?
It was great. Yeah.
So quickly, Discover Outdoors, name, where can people find more information out about you?
DiscoverOutdoors.com. I'm Lauren Skonieczny. You can find me there. I'm all over that website.
I am Laura Edmondson. I'm a leader for Brown Girls Climb. We're at Brown Girls Climb on Instagram. We have our own website as well, browngirlsclimb.com. Check us out.
Fabulous. I was going to say, I love your t-shirt as well. It's like Brown Girls Climb. Absolutely amazing.
We'll be at the Color of the Crag Festival this October in Alabama. So we'd love to have some people come out and join us.
Alabama, sounds amazing. What's your name? Where can we find more information about you?
Whitney Boland, and my website is currently not working. So
what's the website?
Instagram.
Instagram. We love Instagram.
At Whitney Boland, I think. I don't know. That's a good question.
Oh my God, you need to get on social media.
I know. And you can find us at BP Love Outdoors on Instagram. We have some awesome shots of all the fun adventures we're doing. Check us out.
Check us out, absolutely fantastic. Thank you to the Cliffs for hosting this incredible event. It's been amazing.